Hey, Dave Melinda here, Positive Polarity Podcast. Hope things are going awesome for you. As you know, I scour the earth to try and find the best of the best. This time I had to fly all the way to California, not literally, but I found somebody awesome in California. So don't hold that against her, even though it's beautiful out there this time of year. We are hanging out with Lori Baker Shenna. How are you today?
I am so great. It's so good to see and hear you. And I want to say hi to your audience and everyone out there who is learning so much from you. It's a great honor to be here.
Awesome. Well, thanks for hanging out with us. You are involved with, and I'm assuming you own it, but Baker Shenna Communications, correct?
That is my company, exactly.
Awesome. So tell us what's going on there these days.
Well, it's interesting because I'm a professional speaker and a leadership coach.
Okay.
I coaching, let's face it, we've had quite a lot of turmoil this past year, 2020,
Sure.
and a lot of changes for everybody, including me. And I do a lot of leadership coaching, and that has been not too badly changed because I've been using Zoom for years, so
Sure.
that's an easy thing. But transitioning from the live audience, in-person audience to a virtual audience and trying to get the same messages and the same energy across has been
Yeah.
really challenging, but it's doable and it's been fun and we stay busy, but it just is a microcosm of what every single person is going through, trying to understand what's happening in the middle of deep change, which I don't think in all of my years, I've never experienced it.
Sure.
And I know your audience has and is. And so to be able to really change with the challenges is all of our challenge
Yeah,
actually.
absolutely. That's awesome. I mean, it's tough, obviously, in this situation, but we don't have much choice. As a business owner, as an entrepreneur, I don't have the ability to say, no, I can't call the bank and say, you know what, I don't think I'm going to be able to pay you this month because you know I don't it's
Exactly.
gone the virtual. I'm virtual now, right? So we'll jump into a lot of that. I have a question though, right out of the gate for you. When you hear the word communications, because that's part of your business name, that's such a broad term. So can you kind of narrow down a little bit of what you do? I mean, I know you mentioned the leadership coaching and the speaking, but when from the communications perspective, what does that mean to the average entrepreneur that's listening today?
That's such a good question. This is a word that has traveled with me. I started the business 33 years ago as a marketing and public relations consultant in the healthcare field. So I
Okay.
thought that communications would be an overarching phenomenon. And it is because with marketing and PR, you do all sorts of communications. And then I ended up becoming a professor of journalism and marketing for 25 years while I was still having my business. I'm a hard worker. And communication, so it's really like communicating to students and communicating to faculty, and communications continued. And then as I went into my third part of what I call my life career, which is motivational speaking and professional speaking and coaching, that really needs communications. And I think that one of the biggest challenges entrepreneurs face and business people face is how to communicate so that the people you're talking to can hear you, because we can't be one trick ponies. We can't say one thing to one part of our audience and another thing to another. We have to figure out what really works and how to communicate that so people are motivated, they'll buy your product, they'll listen to your podcast. How do you communicate who you are in this huge, place of a lot of information happening?
Sure. That's so cool. We end up doing a lot of work with DISC, the personality profile. And our main mantra, my main thought process, and you correct me if I'm wrong, but I think that, I have a certain way that I communicate, and then you have a certain way that you communicate. And I think the untrained person, the average person that's just hurrying their way through life, they will, like me, I'm just use me, and I use it as a language thing. If my language was Russian and your language was English, and I started this podcast in Russian, how long would it have been before you would have raised your hand and said, Dave, I don't speak that language, right? And that's so often in communication how it is. I have my style. I just do it my way. And my expectation is the listener, in this case, Lori, you, I expect you to acclimate to my way. And that's where I think we run into some problems. So do you get involved in that minutia of communications when you're working in leadership, let's say developing a leader? You know, communications has to be a big topic for you, I would assume, correct?
Yes, and that's a brilliant, brilliant analogy that I'm going to have to steal. So I'll tell you that right now,
Please
because
do. Love it. Love it.
it is really, really great. Because app, you wouldn't believe how much um, need there is for leaders to learn how to communicate with their employees. Because let's say, just say it's one of your C-suite people have a message and they're communicating it at a level that the employees don't understand. For example, let's say that you need to increase productivity and increase hours. So you're not going to want to say to the employees, our company needs to make more money, and that's why we're working harder for you.
Sure.
I mean, that's just not the message you want to say.
Sure.
You want to
Yep.
explain to them how it's going to benefit them, how they can be more successful, what's their pathway to leadership. And most, I hate to say it, most people don't think in those terms. So you're not as effective as you need to be. And I work, since I'm a former journalism professor, also the written word, what you say in an email, or even these days, what you say in a text or in a blog. If you're not mindful of every single thing you put down on paper, or every conversation that you have, you're really not living up to your full potential.
Sure. Wow, that's really cool. And it just so, I mean, communication just happens so much in a day that I know that we tend to forget some of the, not the etiquette, but thinking about their style, thinking about how they're receiving the message. I mean, there's so many things that we in communication can do better. I spend a ton of time training on all the soft skills that are involved, listening skills, questions, eye contact, body language, all that stuff, because I totally get that, it's all communication is all encompassing. So I appreciate your perspective on that. So,
It, it's so true. And Dave, I really love I really love that you focus on listening, because one of my favorite questions I ask of an audience is, how many of you are good listeners, really
oh,
active listeners?
doesn't everyone
And
raise their hand, right?
no, 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 actually, I'm so proud of my audience. Like
Really?
no one does. I'll literally have 500 people in a room and I'll say, how many of you really listen? And I'll literally get 5 hands up,
Wow. See,
because,
this is a Midwest thing, because here in the Midwest, I'm just going to give you a free one here, Lori. When I
okay.
ask that question in my trainings in the Midwest, oh my
Uh-huh.
gosh, everybody raises their hand. So we must listen better than you guys do on the
I
coast.
guess
So
so. We're
it's just
honest.
a bigger blind spot for us. Let's just be real. That's what it is.
But but it's so interesting because, you know, we really don't listen, and people basically are pretty much aware of that. If and just all the distractions in our lives, we have just been lazy. And but one of the biggest things you can do is be a good listener and be an active listener. And people in your body language can tell if you're being listened to, and that
Sure.
is huge. And you teach that, which is extraordinarily important.
Absolutely. And we talk a lot about, and I love these tangents we get on, listening versus hearing, because hearing
Yes.
is a biological function, which we do right now. If you're working out or you're driving or you're walking or whatever you're doing, that is something in addition to listening to this podcast, you're just hearing it, right? It's that biological piece. And I enjoy the listening piece, that where you have to practice it, where you have to be intentional about stopping and listening. I can't even listen to books on tape. I have to really read them, because I read and then I stop and then I kind of regurgitate and understand what's there. So, but from a listening perspective, I mean, most people listen with the intent to reply,
Yeah,
not really to understand.
absolutely.
And I think that that's so critical. When I'm listening to somebody, I'm practicing getting better at listening to really understand what they're saying, not having that, reply. I stop listening halfway through and I'm formulating my response. And, as leaders, those are dangerous waters for us to be in. So
Absolutely. And the person who's speaking knows it.
right.
They know exactly when you go into auto response. You
Yeah.
know, Dave, one of my favorite exercises I give to my audiences is to go home when you were able to go home. Hard ways work. Or go
Yeah.
into the other
You're already
room
home, right? Yeah.
after a hard day's work,
Yep.
and ask your significant other, how was your day? And sit there and listen to him or her
Yep.
for 10 minutes, uninterrupted, sitting down,
Yeah.
eye to eye, and
Right.
really listening. They will freak out. First of all, they'll think something's wrong,
Yes, exactly.
because
I was
usually
just gonna
when you
say,
do
yeah.
that, you're like, you're getting ready for dinner, you're watching the kids. But to sit down and go, how was your day? And then
Yeah.
ask that, they'll freak. But it just goes to show you that we don't, even in our personal lives, we don't listen. And when we listen to our kids deeply and to our
Yeah.
significant others deeply, we really enhance their lives and our lives. But it really takes mindfulness that you have to, I mean, who wants to do that? Let's face it. Last thing I want to do is talk to anybody, especially since I talk all day in my
Yep.
job.
Yep.
But that respect is extraordinary. And
Yep.
it's one of the key things I always tell people, to give it a shot.
Yeah, no kidding. And I think naturally, from the disc perspective, from your personality, there are personalities that naturally are results oriented and don't have time. I mean, you just did like the fingers on the fingernails on the chalkboard for some of the listeners, because they're like 10 minutes to sit and not, I mean, seriously, I don't have that kind of time, to do that. For us at home, what I do for my wife is I say to her, what was the favorite part of your day? Because how was your day is like, fine. I mean, it's kind of like it can be a real uneventful ending to that. So
Good point.
I've kind of created like, so tell me, what was the favorite part? What was the best thing that happened to you? She does that to me, and then we kind of work our way into that from there. But you're right. People can tell when you're not listening. And I think as a leader, that's a really important quality, is if you are going to invest in your team, invest your time and your energy to really make sure that they understand that you understand. Because I think we've all had bosses and leaders, managers, whatever, that really didn't pay attention to us.
And
And
there's nothing worse in my
right.
book.
Yep. Absolutely. So I want to ask you a question, because I barely graduated high school, and you have your doctorate in organizational leadership, and I'm just like, oh my gosh, that's like super intimidating. So thank you for toning it down for me personally. But what is organizational leadership, and how does that differ, or is that really the same when you hear the word leadership? Does that organizational word create a whole different area of expertise? Or unpack that for us, if you would.
That's such a great question. I went to an incredible program. It was a University of Laverne out here in California. And we had 3 years. It was a 3-year program, and from people from all walks of life. And the first year was totally um, devoted to the individual, and also self. So you really had to learn about yourself. Like, who are you as an individual? Who are you as a leader? Because you can't coach leaders until you know what you are and how
Sure.
you act. And so all that. And also we learned a lot of one-on-one, like, not, I'm sure if you heard of nonviolent communication, one of my favorite things to
Yeah.
teach now. Um, but skills to help with conflict management. And so really the individual. And then the second year was devoted to teams,
Okay.
where you learned how to create functional teams in an organization. And that was tremendous. And that was my actual dissertation, what I focused on how to do teams. Because, you remember when you were thrown into a team anywhere, like at work or at school, and you say, okay, go do something. And then it just self-destructs, because people don't know how to work in teams. They just
Right.
don't.
Yeah.
And so my whole dissertation was, let's teach college students teamwork and see how they do. And they thrived.
Yeah.
But those you didn't teach them, they'd like literally would be yelling at each other down the hall. It was bad. And then the third year, we
Yeah.
learned about how to bring together organizations so that you don't have, you're not in silos. You enhance communication. You enhance across the board thinking and out of the box thinking. So by the time you're done, you really have a taste of what it takes to keep a business going. So I was really lucky, Dave, that I had a MBA that was a focus in marketing.
Okay.
So I was able to take the marketing ideas that I had and layer it with the organizational leadership to really help not only people understand who they were as an organization, but how to be more productive and also how to market themselves. So it's just been a joy to do this. And I found that I really enjoyed leadership, and I love creating leaders, because we're not, some of us may be born that way, but there's so many things that you need to do and be to really be an effective leader and to like it. I mean,
Yeah.
some people don't like it, and that just drives me crazy too. So that's my doctorate. But
Wow.
it's I'm really glad I did. It was a very progressive doctorate, and
Okay.
it was fun.
Fun.
It
Okay,
was.
listen. Okay, for all you listening, there was actually somebody that said their doctorate was fun. So thank you for that perspective, Lori, because I don't hear that very often, that it was like fun, right? It's pain, life changing. There's some other words that I hear, but that's
Yeah.
awesome.
Well, when you really have this journey to self-discovery, and it really helps tap into your passion. I mean, there was pain, don't get me wrong, but it was
Sure.
fun pain. I mean, it was relevant.
There you go. Well, and I think that again, you put two words together that not a lot of people like to use, and that's self-discovery. I think that, and I can speak for myself. I can't speak for other people, so I'll just keep it personal. But there's times where I'm kind of afraid to do the self-discovery because I'm afraid of what I'm going to find. I'm going to find something inconsistent, maybe a behavior is inconsistent with what I do, or a thought process is inconsistent with who I think I am. I mean, there's the fear of the unknown, and it's almost sometimes better, like, to not know. But yet, if you don't know, you don't it's you can't go down that road. So when you run into people that are afraid, I'm just going to use me, so I'm your subject right here. I'm if I'm struggling with that self discovery, what are some things that you would, some tips or some encouragement, or what would you tell somebody that's listening that maybe is at that same spot that I'm at right now?
I love this question. And I would love to go into this with you, because people, everything that holds people get stuck, and people are afraid because of fear that's usually irrational. And that fear stems from what people are thinking about me. You just said it. What are people going to think about me as a leader, and will I look like a failure?
Right.
So what I have my clients do is dig deep into the scenario. Okay, let's pretend that you do fail, and that your clients think you're awful. Is that going to kill you? Is
Yeah.
that going to lead to your destruction? Is that going to take food away from you? Are you going to starve? Are you going to
Right.
like lose your house?
Yep.
Because if you think about people in the limelight who really put, like, I think about football kickers, and how sometimes they lose these kicks, and it's a massive failure, you know, and yet they still walk around, and they still can do their job. So you have to really get out of what people are thinking about you and start working on your core and figuring out what is working and what isn't. And it's like an exercise, like it's as important as exercising your core physically. When you create a strong inner core and you really get to know yourself and use all of this vulnerability and this fear to make you a better leader, and to really get you like mindful of who you are going to find success, and it's right around the corner from that. But that fear of worrying about what people are thinking about you or failing at what you do is going to keep you stuck, and it will never let you get any higher than you are right now. the
Well, and
most the
yeah,
strongest
go ahead.
leaders are those who are most vulnerable and are who are willing to look at themselves and see what's going wrong.
Well, and, what a great place to get to, or what a great goal to get to a plateau where you can say, I really don't care what other people think. You know, it might sound like freeing and oh my gosh, that's really, just like a weight's been lifted. But I know it's not like you don't just say it and it doesn't just happen. I mean, some people struggle with that their whole lives. Some people need to go to counseling. Some people, that's why you and I exist from an executive coaching perspective, because realistically, when somebody's stuck, and let's say you're stuck in the mud, you can't get out by yourself. I mean, you just can't, right? That's why
Absolutely.
you have somebody come alongside you and help you with that. So it's harder. It's really hard to look at yourself and to think self-discovery, and to be willing to look at, oh, I have a blemish here, I walk with a limp here, I stutter here, whatever it is, it's hard. So I appreciate your opinion on how do you possibly get unstuck.
Well,
What are some tips?
I think it's so interesting because you have to again build your inner core. And what is that? That there's a point where you realize that you cannot please everybody, and that people are bringing their own baggage to the table of whatever there is.
Okay.
I was bullied as a child and bullied hard. I had buck teeth, I had glasses, and it was really rough when I was in elementary school. It was so rough, and it was so rough that this guy came up to me in my 30th high school reunion and apologized to me for being so mean. And I looked at him and I didn't know who he was.
Wow.
So, so I learned, and I was very lucky to have a very strong father. My mother had died young, so I had a very strong father. And he said to me, "You know what? You are good, and these people have their own issues, and bullies have their own issues, and so you can't use them to become who you are. You have
Sure.
to become you from inside. So you take so you have to, so that from that experience there comes a point, okay, who am I and how am I going to grow this? Right?
Hmm.
And so then it goes all through your life. And look, I'm a public speaker and I had stomach cancer. I had it when I was 55, right?
Wow.
So I don't have a flat stomach anymore. I have, I'm my body is not what I would like to have it on a stage.
Sure.
Okay. But I there's nothing, it's what you can control, what you can't. I have a lot of valuable information to give to people and they need it. So I don't worry about what they're thinking of what I look like. And I'm usually very open about it anyway. It's not that big, but to me it's big, but it's not going to stop me from doing great things because I might not look like, a celebrity or something like that. But
Sure.
I have such an important thing to do. So what I'm saying is that feelings of self-worth and the feelings that you really have something to give to the world should supersede any fear you have of what a blemish or what people are thinking.
Yeah.
And you really elevate above that to really get what you want done. And you'll find people who have, I had a brother with cerebral palsy. You just get beyond the stairs and beyond that and really live your life. And when you can claim your life like that, it's a good thing, and it's a conscious decision. You say, David says, I want to do this. This is who I want to be, and
Sure.
this is how I'm going to do it. And it does take therapy, and it does take coaching.
Yep.
You can't do it alone, but I'll tell you, it's possible.
Yeah, totally. And it's interesting because when I wrote my Amazon #1 best-selling book, Growing on Purpose, I'm writing it and I have somebody helping me along because I've never done this before. And, there were multiple times in this situation, Lori, where I'm like, who's going to read this? This thing pops into your mind. Like, you're not good enough. You don't have the credentials. You're not, right. All this stuff. And you have to kind of just fight your way through that stuff. And even up until launch date, I'm like, who's going to buy this? I mean, I just kept fighting this, but I kept thinking that there's a message here. And then I had to get to the point, Lori, where I'm like, if this helps one person, you know what, then it's an expensive venture, but one person got helped and, I have to be okay with that. And then I realized, like on my podcast, I'm like, I started thinking, I'm going to, tell the world all I know. And like one or two episodes in, I'm like, shoot, I'm just writing, taking notes. I'm learning. I'm the student here. I'm not the teacher in any way, shape, or form, So I appreciate that. I think it takes a different perspective, on how to do this and what you're trying to get out of it. So it's tough, but thank you for sharing that.
I love your example, because what I also tell people is what you say to yourself is often wrong. Like everything you said about yourself
Right,
is off base. I mean,
right.
from a perfectly practical, non-emotional, you do have a lot to offer. You are intelligent. You do have incredible experience. So the things we tell ourselves, I always
Yep.
say to everybody, like really listen to the things you're telling. Are you saying factually what you're saying? So everything that you said was untrue. The big, our most successful entrepreneurs never went to college. I mean, so all that is just blown out of the water these
Right.
days. Right?
Yep. Yep.
And so that's why I love that example, because I can say to you, everything you said to yourself was not only, it was difficult, but it was also not right. I mean,
Right.
correct,
Yep,
like
absolutely.
factually.
Yeah, so again, if you are listening and you're struggling with this stuff, I mean, the cool part is that there are other people that are struggling with it, and I think it's so helpful to be able to have to know that somebody else is going through that. So that's part of the reason that we're here. That's part of the reason that I try to make myself vulnerable is, to allow other people to go, holy cow, I thought I was the only one that felt that way. So that's my personal side of it. So I'm assuming there's things that you're still struggling with, and we all have these things, and our goal isn't to say, okay, Lori, tell us your deepest darkest secrets. It's to more be understanding that when you struggle, find somebody that you trust, whether it's a family member, a friend, a coach, I don't care who it is, but to go through things with other people is way better than to have to go through it by yourself, especially as a leader, because that's why I enjoy peer groups and those sorts of things, because I think there's some real value in that kind of stuff. Where do you encourage your leaders to go, Lori, when they're struggling to kind of understand? Is that the relationship that you tend to form with them then?
Yeah, I really, you hit the nail on the head. The support groups, the peer support groups is great. I also want to encourage everyone listening to do two things: find a mentor and be a mentor. And I am where I am today because I'm on the shoulders of many men and women who helped me get where I am today, both from
Gotcha.
my marketing job to my teaching to my doctorate to what I'm doing today. I'm always learning, and people are so kind. And there's no, I always, if you want to do something, I encourage you to go meet, write someone, say, "Could you give me, 5 or 10 minutes of your time, and let me know, give me some hints." And if someone in your life, if they can mentor you, people like to mentor,
Yeah.
and it's not a bother. And then you need to turn it around and you need to be a mentor, because whatever you're doing in this world, someone needs you.
Yeah.
And that makes you feel super good, and it really adds to your experience. And so those two things I think are crucial when it comes to really building your own self-esteem, but also building your experience.
Wow.
And of course, I struggle. I tell people I fail every day. I mean, there's always, it's hilarious how much like I screw up. My attitude is, first of all, I'm above ground, which makes me really super happy. So whatever, it's not gonna like, wipe me out. God, I hope. But,
Yeah.
but I also I learn so much from screwing up. I mean,
Yeah.
I wouldn't be doing this without learning. So the people who screw up and don't learn, who aren't self-aware, who are narcissistic, those are the people who you see aren't doing very well. But
Sure.
those who fail and learn from it, some of the most successful people on this planet have failed several times and gotten back up. And that's why we cannot I'm so sick of everyone shaming failing,
Yeah.
because how are you going to learn if you don't screw up? I don't know how that happens. I just
Yeah.
don't. And we're not teaching our kids to screw up enough. We're not,
Yeah,
all of our expectations are so crazy. So that's a real passion thing for me,
that's
obviously.
awesome. Yeah. Well, and so we've been tapping into your leadership side. I want to tap into your marketing side a little bit as we start to come in for a landing. But I want to learn a little bit about, we talked before the show about personal branding. So, how do you tie that into your leadership side? Kind of marry those two together for us, Lori, if you would.
Well, after speaking through this, Dave, it's interesting. So what is self-discovery all about? It really is about creating a leadership brand.
Hmm.
So what is a leadership brand? It's when you show up, people know who you are. Think of people who are leaders in the world that you admire. And what their brand, you know what to expect from them. You know how to show up. So who are you? When you walk into a room, what can people expect from you? And what do you want people to view you as? And this is totally separate from your business, even as an entrepreneur.
Sure.
And it's not, and where your reputation is what you've done, your personal brand is who you are now and where you want to go.
Oh, good point.
So you want to walk in and say, so my brand, I work hard at being, accessible, but also I'm reliable and I'm compassionate. I'm a good listener. These sort of things. What are you doing as a leader that people walk in the room and can count on you to do that? And what do you want? What do you want to project authentically so
Sure.
that people say, I want to buy something from this person.
Sure.
I want the best. And this guy's or this woman is the best.
Right.
So that is what a leadership brand is. And it's basically branding yourself like you're branding, a company actually.
Sure. Wow. That's, yeah. So you said brand versus who you were,
Reputation. Mhm.
reputation. I got to write that down because I'm like, man, that's just like, I mean, and that's the weird thing is you walk into a room and people are like, oh my gosh, he did this or she did that, or, did you hear about this? And right. I mean, so you have to fight through all of that to really project your brand, which is who you are at that moment. And so, I don't know the technical part of it, but I can tell you, and just because it's just you and me on this, I can tell you, like me, I brand my long blonde hair. I don't know why. I mean, it's not like I want to do it. I enjoy having long hair, but it sure seems to be a brand that people somehow can let their guard down with, because I don't walk into a three-piece suit meeting with a three-piece suit. And so, my brand might be a little different, but it also might turn off a banker, a lawyer, somebody that is in that, so I don't think there's a right or wrong to it. But, what are some things brand wise for you, Lori? What do you talked a little bit about vulnerability and those sorts of things. How do you then turn that into the business side?
You brought up 5 great points just now, just talking about yourself, which I love. Okay, first of all, the fact that your physical appearance does so if I was coaching you and we took a deep dive,
Yeah.
what does the long hair mean? I mean, in terms of communication, what are you communicating? Okay. So obviously you're communicating someone who isn't your typical business person, who isn't afraid to go into that space, yet knows enough about business to be able to do something
Right.
really well. And the second thing that you said is some people might be turned off. And the most important thing that you bring as a brand is realizing that some people will be turned off. You are not going to make, if you're authentically yourself, and it goes right back to my original statement, you're not going to make everybody happy. So you have to, but the people you make happy, you'll make really happy. And the people who want to work with someone who looks like you and and also you look like this guy and then you bring this incredible practical knowledge that can move people forward. That is your brand. And then
Sure.
just the way what you called this podcast is part of your brand. It's all that.
Sure.
And you don't want to, you want to lean into it. You want to lean into it. So what I do is, for me, it's the value you bring to the table. And
Okay.
so what do you bring to the table? I help, and my brand is people know that after they're done listening to me, they leave happy, and feeling better about themselves and realizing they can get what they need to get
Sure.
accomplished.
Yeah.
That is my brand. And and I know that people who are miserable are not gonna and don't want to improve are they're not going to benefit from me, and I won't benefit from them.
Yeah. Isn't it
So
something that when
yeah,
people are negative, they want to bring you down with? I mean, there's very few people that are looking for a lifeline. If they're negative, they're trying to be negative. They want to be negative and they want you to come down with them. They're not like, hey, Lori, help me down here. I'm negative, right? I mean, I don't know about you, but that seems to be what what I run
absolutely.
into, right?
And I don't coach people like that because I can't help them. You know what
Yeah.
I'm saying? It's an individual thing, you know? So I one of the couple of steps you to understand the value, and what you can do is develop a personal mission statement
Okay.
on how you want to impact the world
Okay.
personally and professionally. Like, what are you trying to do? What is that impact that you want to do? Because when you walk into a room, especially as a speaker or anything in business, and you know how you want to impact your business, how you want to impact your customers, how you want to improve people's lives. When you walk in and you show up like that,
Yeah.
people get it, and then it's all that whole branding thing.
Sure.
And also, you really need to figure out your strengths and how to hone your strengths and how to present your strengths, because those are things you really want to focus on with your brand. You know, I can't sing, so that's not part of my brand.
Well, so just a quick question on the strengths thing, because I mean, like for people listening that don't feel they don't necessarily know what their strengths are, in our disc assessments, they give you, the value to the organization, they show you strengths and things like that. Is also like the strength finders a good idea? I mean, what do you suggest if I was a client and I said, Lori, I just don't know what I'm good at? Do you then where do you push them in that point?
First of all, I love strengths finders. I
Okay,
just
good.
absolutely love it. That's just I love it. Okay, but two things I help my clients do. There's a two-step process. The
Okay.
first is keeping a strengths journal. So every night you at the end of the day, you list 5 things that you did well that day, personally or professionally, whatever you're doing. And what skill did you bring to the table that allowed you to have that success? So if you do 5 of those, that's like if you just do it, 5 days a week, that's 25 strengths. You'll have 200 strengths or 100 strengths. To my adding 100 strengths, in a month.
I missed
You
that
know,
day in math too,
yeah,
Lori. So it's all
and I have an
good.
MBA. But the biggest miracle is we have an MBA, but that's a whole nother story. But so you had 100 strengths in a month, so you kind of start discovering what's working for you,
Yeah.
and that also helps build your self-esteem. The other thing is you have to ask people what your strengths are, and you can say, you know what, I'm doing some kind of research project, but could you honestly tell me what are my 3 strengths? And if you're really brave, you'll ask them what your 3 weaknesses are, but that's not necessarily an issue. But what are my 3? So get an idea of what people perceive you as and what you perceive yourself. And that's where and then, use the strengths finders and find out what you're good at.
Yeah.
I'm really good at communicating. I'm not very good at like any kind of budgeting or financing.
Sure.
I hire, people to do all that, but I'm really good I'm a great writer. I'm a great communicator, and I'm a great, I mean, I'm continuing to be a great speaker.
Sure.
But that again is something that I've learned over the years, the strengths that I have.
Sure.
And I'm learning how to be, teaching people how to be better team members and better leaders. And that's it's all continuous learning.
Wow. So I want to ask you this, because now I feel like I want to commit to this strengths journal thing, and I want to just purely for my own knowledge. I mean, if I write down 5 things that I did well today, so I'm just gonna
So
think
name
here.
one.
Yeah, so I got to think here.
Okay.
I mean, what did I do well today? So, I mean, I feel like I've asked the right questions. I feel like I've communicated effectively for our time here together. So,
Okay.
if I write that down, that I communicated well with Lori.
Okay. So then how did you do that? Well, like what strengths of yours allows you to communicate well? Are you a good listener?
Yeah,
Are
I
you
would
using
say
your
probably.
words? Are
Yeah.
you, so what I'm saying is you dig down into that. So
Okay.
what did I do? So I'm a good interviewer. I'm a good communicator. I'm also listening to what my audience needs. So I'm a multitasker. Everything you bring all these skills into it,
Okay.
and you're able to get your book. You mentioned your book today,
Yep.
which was, I think, is great from a marketing perspective.
Sure.
So, so your mindfulness. So it's not just the surface. It's like such a good question, Dave. It's not a surfacey thing. It's like, what does it take? Like when you get to a point, you take it for granted that these are your strengths, but you shouldn't. You should figure out what are you doing well, and then you can amplify those so that you can take that interviewing to another level. You can
Gotcha.
take the communication.
Okay. Wow, that's cool. And I got to believe that, again, for those of you listening, going, there's no way that I can sit for 5 or 10 minutes every day and do this. I mean, our goal is just to share with you ideas. And I always tell people, if I give you an idea and you don't do it, I'm fine with that. But you can't get mad at me if your life doesn't change, because we keep giving you opportunities every week on how to improve your life. We talk about the intersection between business growth and personal growth. Sometimes we talk about personal growth, sometimes business, sometimes both. And they're so intertwined and interweaved in your life that I'm hoping, that some of the stuff that Lori today talked about will help you. And, because that's why we're here. I mean, that's one person helping another is so cool. It's like a blind, person, and you're, putting their hand right where the lost coin is that they're looking for. That's exactly what we're supposed to do. So I appreciate that, Lori, on that end. I want to make sure that you touched on something, and then I'm going to ask you a couple questions and let you go. You touched on an important thing that I want to circle back to on the marketing side, and I wrote down some will and some won't. We have to understand that there are people that we will not click with. They will not appreciate what we have. There's just some people, some will and some won't. And so I appreciate that. I didn't want to bypass that, because so many people get like a negative attitude in the selling situation, for instance, or in a leadership situation. If it's not like instant, oh my gosh, I love you, you're the best, I want to hang out with you forever. There's gonna be some people that don't connect. So when you get those like that, Lori, any tips for people that may be struggling to get along with somebody?
Well, it's interesting. You do not want to be everything to all people. You just don't want to do that. I mean, from a sales perspective, there's different hamburgers. There's like 7, 8 hamburger places right around me. Okay, what? You have to not worry about other people's hamburgers and worry about what makes your hamburger so special.
Which one's
You
your
know,
favorite, by the way?
I like Rustic Burger. There's a place called Rustic Burger near us,
N-
which is
no,
really amazing.
never heard of
Okay,
it.
we have In and Out, of course, which is
Okay.
world famous, but we also have some really good small
Cool.
places,
Good,
and
good.
Jimmy D. I mean, we're big burger fans. But what I'm saying is that everyone has their own strengths, and you're not gonna not everyone eats burgers. I
Yeah.
mean, so you're gonna have people who are vegetarians. I mean, let's say you have a veggie burger, whatever, but what I'm saying is that not everyone is going to like you. So you really have to laser focus on the people who want to buy your products and then go whole hog into them. And the only thing you can control is you. You can control, make a better product. The people who your audience, you can't control. You can put it out there, but whether they buy is a whole different thing. And that's where the magic of marketing comes in, to really communicate how special you are to the people who need your product. I always said the example of, a purse or a pocketbook. I don't know what you guys say in the Midwest, but a purse, does one thing. It holds items. Some people want to buy theirs at Target. Some people want to buy it at Gucci. All right. Gucci clients do not want to see Target ads, and Target clients don't care about Gucci. And yet they both do the same thing. They both carry items.
Sure.
So you have to really understand your audience and embrace them
Yep.
and not worry about any, well, whatever else is doing.
Hmm, that is so cool. Yeah, I'm not a Gucci or a Target person, so somewhere probably in the
Whatever
middle, right?
purse you
And I
wear,
don't carry purse, so
so okay, so there you get, there it
just
is.
laying it out there. So so awesome. Hey, two questions, Lori. So Lori Baker Shenna's tip of the week, what would that be?
So I think that after talking about this, I want everyone to really think hard about investing in themselves.
Okay.
And I know, and I'm not even talking about money, I'm talking about time. Time is our most precious commodity, especially as we get older. But if you really want to succeed, you've got to start with you, the listener right here, and invest in yourself. And so my tip is to start thinking about what your leadership brand is and
Awesome.
what you want, how you want to show up in the world. Because if you mindfully do it, you'll really get ahead.
Wow, that's so cool. Have you dug down into this? I know I wasn't going to ask you any more questions, but oh well. It's my podcast. I can do what I want.
I love that.
So have you dug down into understanding the leadership brand from a return on investment perspective? So many people that I run into, I work with, listening to this podcast are ROI people. I want to do this and I get this out of it. Is there any research? Have you done anything to kind of understand if there is, in fact, a tangible return? Because there's going to be people that are going to be like, I'll do it, but what am I going to get out of it? So maybe a broader question is, if I do this leadership, um, you know, um, branding, what will I get out of it? What will success look like on the back end?
Well, I'm sure there's research, and I would love to, go back and look at it because I'm sure there's personal research, but it's raising awareness of you. People, if you don't have a brand, if you don't have a personal, we don't know you exist in the world as a leader. So if you want to show up and so who's going to call you, or who's going to refer people to you, or who's going to answer your phone calls or answer your emails if you aren't a credible leader? The stronger your brand, the more you're going to get responsiveness from the people you want to work with, and the more doors that will open because people know you, and they not only know you but understand your value. So
Gotcha.
that's the benefit there. And also, secondary, it makes you feel good to have a brand and to know where you are in the world, because that makes you stronger internally, because this is who I am. And I'm not going to cut my blonde hair off because this is who I'm teasing, but you know what I'm saying? This is who
Yeah.
I am.
Yep.
And I feel really good about me. And so, I think, so bottom line, opening doors that you want open is really crucial. And that brings in more business,
Sure. Awesome.
and and also just self-worth and self-esteem.
Wow, cool. Well, thank you for sharing that. That was a two-parter. I normally just let you go on that, but it just jumped into my mind. So I appreciate that. So here's the fun question for people that don't know you, that are listening. What's one thing that you feel comfortable sharing that they would not know about you?
um hmm, uh Yikes, what, something that I'm so transparent. Oh, I have kind of a fun personal
Yeah.
thing. So, I got divorced in 2002, and then I remarried my husband in 2013.
Holy
So
cow.
we had 11-year break, and then we got back together. So a lot of people publicly don't know that, but I mean, it's because it's not really relevant,
Sure.
but it's fun. But it's fun. It's a fun fact, and it's a real great love story, and it's a wonderful thing to have done. People are. It's funny, and when you tell people that, they're either incredibly shocked, or they're incredibly like, that's fabulous, or that's horrifying, depending on your ex-wife.
Yeah.
But we really needed time. We needed 11 years to grow. So we
Yeah.
did. And now it's been wonderful. It's been a whole different, and we count from the second marriage, like how long we've been together. So that's my fun
Wow,
fact.
that's so. Do you have two anniversaries or just one now?
Just one, just
Just
the
one.
most recent one.
Nice. Well, and that is the epitome of personal growth, right? That is why we do this podcast, because, to be able to talk to somebody that has a doctorate in organizational leadership, running their own company, been doing all this stuff. If you were doing your communications company for 33 years, it means you started when you were 7. So congratulations on that.
Thank you. I was a very young person.
That's fantastic that you were doing that. So Lori, if somebody wants to learn more about what we talked about today, if somebody's really on that, kind of that teeter-totter about investing in themselves, they're interested, it's kind of scratching an itch deep down, but they don't know what to do next. What's the best way for them to get in contact with you so that you can have a conversation with them?
Well, my website's the best way to go. It's loribakershenna.com.
Okay.
And I love fielding questions and talking to people who come on who happen upon my website, because it's really good just to touch base, and I enjoy meeting people, and so that's the way to go, and finding out, what do I need to do to, my goal is to help people fill the gap between where they are and where they want to be. And sometimes people don't even know where they want to be. So even figuring that out.
Wow, it's so cool. Well, this time flew by. I got way more questions. I got a ton of notes, like always. So I just want to say thank you for hanging out with us. Thank you for sharing, making yourself vulnerable, and hopefully helping people with their personal branding, with their communication. I mean, we covered a gamut of stuff. So hopefully we'll be able to get back on a stage sometime soon, and I'd be honored to share a stage with you somewhere in the country. So let's keep in touch, and hopefully we can make that happen.
That would be awesome. Thank you so much for your time, and wishing your audience all of the best.
Absolutely. Thanks again, Lori. Have a great day.
Thank you.